very pleased to welcome Professor Anatol Lieven to this year's Rhodes Conference. Anatol, could you talk a little bit about terrorism, which is one of your many areas of expertise? Specifically, how have recent acts of terror in Europe affected the European Union's ability to formulate a cohesive policy response to the migration crisis?
The terrorist attacks in Europe over the past year have obviously greatly heightened the anxieties of European populations about terrorism, but obviously about Muslim migration as well. Now, there isn't, of course, a direct link there, but politically speaking, it is inevitable that this link should be made. And of course, have also raised still further existing concerns about lack of integration and also lack of social and economic progress among, by no means all the Muslim populations in Europe, perhaps not even a majority of them, but certainly very extensive sections of those communities, which over pretty long periods now one has seen living in circumstances of relative economic impoverishment, isolation, lack of opportunity.
You've written recently about US politics, and with the US election coming up, what would the implications of either result be for America's continued dialogue with the rest of the world?
If Hillary Clinton wins, one can expect basically more of the same. I mean, a continuation of existing policies, perhaps rather more hard-edged than Obama, but certainly a stance of deep hostility to Russia, containment of China. Hillary was largely an architect of this strategy of the pivot to Asia. So it's predictable, although one doesn't know what its consequences will be, because of course one doesn't know how the Chinese will react to this. And that, I think, is the greatest danger of a Clinton administration in external policy, the possibility that it will in fact lead to some kind of actual clash with China. Which, of course, could have drastic implications for the world economy. But there one can see the trajectory, even if one isn't sure what it will lead to. Trump, of course, much, much less predictable. I think one will certainly see a greater degree of US disengagement. Trump has made clear that he has no interest in confronting Russia in Ukraine and elsewhere. One will see attempts, at least, at greater cooperation with Russia in the Middle East. Certainly deep opposition to further American interventionism anywhere. The biggest question for Trump as well will be relations with China. But there, of course, Trump has said that his interest above all is dealing in a tough fashion with China over trade, economics. Now that raises the question, would Trump be able to, would he be allowed by the American establishment to seek a strategic deal with China in which China would make economic concessions in return for US strategic concessions? I think one might see a situation where Trump himself, given what he said about the alliance with Japan and other issues, might be tempted by that. Whether the Chinese would agree is one question. Whether the American establishment would allow a President Trump to do that is another question.
Finally, it's very good to see you here in Rhodes. Could you just tell us a little bit about your expectations for this year's forum?
Well, I'm really hoping, and some of the speeches that I've heard so far have encouraged me, that it will lead to some really new thinking, above all on issues of social, cultural and moral reform in response to the crises that we are facing. I like the title of this conference because it is, if you like, quite a dramatic one. It talks about civilization. But I think, if one looks around the world, if one looks at the situation in the Middle East, but if one also looks at some of the recent votes in America and in Europe, we are not in the deepest of crises yet, but our direction is heading there, and heading there pretty fast. So it is clearly time for some radical new thinking, and I hope that this conference will give birth to some of that.